Dopamine has everything to do with how motivated and driven you and I feel right now. It has everything to do with how eager we are to lean into life and to pursue things. Depleted dopamine levels could lead to severe negative consequences, not just for us mentally, but also physically. Low dopamine levels could lead to a lack of motivation and difficulty initiating tasks, and also a reduced interest in pursuing specific goals. Dopamine is also involved in regulating our energy levels. Therefore, depleted dopamine levels could lead to fatigue and a general lack of drive to do even normal daily activities such as making your bed and taking out the trash. Low dopamine levels are also often linked to certain depressive symptoms, such as persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. Dopamine plays a key role in regulating our mood, and any imbalances could lead to the development or the worsening of depression. All these things could potentially be devastating to not just our motivation and drive, but also our life in general. And therefore, we have to do whatever we can to optimize our dopamine systems. We can start by adopting or at least improving some of our basic lifestyle habits. But before we look at those lifestyle habits, I think it's very useful for us to have a basic understanding of how dopamine exists in our brains. And to explain this to you, I'm going to borrow an analogy from Dr. Kyle Gillette called the wave pool analogy. Imagine your brain as a wave pool, the kind of wave pool that you may find at a water park. In this graphic, the red box represents the wave pool. The blue line represents the water level when the pool is still. In our brains, the blue line will represent the baseline level of dopamine. The pink line represents the waves in the pool. In our brains, that would be the peaks and dips in dopamine that we experience whenever we do something fun or pleasurable. In a wave pool, high and frequent waves would cause some of the water to slosh out, and the overall water level would drop. It kind of works like that in our brains too. Understanding this basic principle can help us to leverage the whole system to our advantage. Yes, there are certain practical things that we can do to leverage the dopamine system to serve us better. We are not simply at the mercy of our brain chemistry. The first and the most important thing we can do to have better, healthier dopamine systems is to make sure we get good quality sleep. Because dopamine levels get depleted, they need to be replenished, and this happens during our sleep, which makes sleep the cornerstone of a healthy dopamine system. What works for me is to go to bed early, get at least 7 hours of sleep, go to sleep at the same time every night if at all possible, and not drink any coffee after 12 noon. Now, we are all individuals. What works for me is not necessarily going to work for you. It's up to you to go and do the research, find some tactics, experiment with those tactics, and use the ones that work for you. But whatever you do, get better sleep. The second lifestyle habit for better, healthier dopamine levels is, surprise, surprise, exercise. If you don't yet exercise, you really need to exercise regularly. Now, when we exercise, and especially afterwards, we do experience those peaks in dopamine because for most people it feels really good. But I'm not really talking about those peaks in dopamine. I'm also here talking about the baseline level of dopamine. When we exercise, the neurons in our brain that are responsible for producing dopamine become more active, and that leads to higher levels of dopamine over time. The kind of exercise and how much of it you need is gonna again depend on you, your current fitness levels, your age, your specific goals. For me, as I'm growing older, I want to make sure I get enough cardiovascular exercise, resistance training, mobility training, and flexibility training. Again, what works for me or what I need may not necessarily be what you are going to need. But in terms of dopamine, I don't think it really matters what exercise you do as long as you get enough of it. Now, the third lifestyle habit we need to take a look at for improved dopamine levels is our nutrition. Now, this can be quite a minefield because there are so many diets out there. It seems like everyone and their mother these days have a diet that they would peddle as the best one around. I'm not going to recommend any kind of diet, but I am going to recommend that you consume more foods high in L-tyrosine. L-tyrosine is an amino acid and the precursor to the production of L-dopa, which is the precursor to the production of dopamine. So, foods that are high in L-tyrosine can improve your baseline levels if you don't already consume them. Foods high in L-tyrosine include lean meats, dairy products, eggs, nuts, seeds, and legumes. There are also supplements, L-tyrosine supplements out there. I don't use them. I don't know if they're really necessary, but I guess they are worth checking out. I have heard Dr. Andrew Huberman on his podcast talk about those. So if you're interested, go check them out. But again, it's going to depend on you. And if you do decide to take any supplements or vitamins, remember, it's probably better to consult your physician about that first. Healthy baseline dopamine levels are essential to our overall well-being, but because of its huge influence specifically on our motivation and drive, if you are an ambitious person with goals that you want to achieve, then paying attention to your dopamine system is even more crucial. To help you optimize your dopamine system, I have created a beautiful, pretty comprehensive guide on this topic called Dopamine Drive. You can get free access to this guide on my website, philipboerta.com. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Also, if you have any questions about this topic or you would like to add to the conversation, please do so in the comment section below. I would love to connect with you there. Until next time, cheers.